All right, well, welcome everybody for joining us today. And today will be our Ask the Arborist caring for trees before and after the storm. My name is Michelle Diaz. I'm the Education Manager at Trees Atlanta. And our mission is to protect and improve Atlanta's urban forests by planting, conserving, and educating. We host programs like these year-round, some in person, some virtual. At the end of this event, you're going to be receiving a survey, and a survey email. We'll love to get your feedback to see what kind of topics you would like us to be covering in this Ask the Arborist or in any other event. You can also send us questions through the Q&A button and also through the chat, and we'll be discussing questions live. Our next event, our next Ask the Expert will be about trees for dry conditions. And that will be on Wednesday, September the 21st at noon. This is an excellent opportunity for you to take a look at what trees will be good for you, taking a look at what we're going to be offering in our upcoming tree sale, which is going to be on October 8th. And I also encourage you and invite you to sign up for our newsletter and visit our website and our social media. Our speakers today are Christie, Bryant, and Alex Beasley. Christie and Alex are both certified arborists. Christie is the founder of Speaking for Trees, arborist consultant company. And she's also the past president of the Georgia Arborist Association. And Alex is our very own Associate Director of Donor Relations and Facilities at Trees Atlanta. So thank you both for being here today with us. So we're going to start right away with some questions about what to do before the storm. Any general thoughts about, like, what do we need to think about before the storm, Alex or Christie?
I think really the most important thing that you can do is keep in mind the right tree, right place moniker. We at Trees Atlanta, and hopefully all arboriculturally focused companies and nonprofits need to keep that in mind. That's the most important thing that you can do to prevent future maintenance issues, future failures of trees. You know, I could drone on about this for hours and hours and hours, but really it's just super important to do your research before you're selecting a tree. You know, some of it is common sense, some of it is experiential, some of it is on the tag. But I really encourage you to look into books like Dr. Michael Durr to really get definitive answers before you're going to make a purchase and before you install a tree on your property. You know, there's basic mistakes that you can make, like putting an oak tree under power lines, or, you know, putting a sourwood in full sun, you know, a drought heavy condition, something like that. But really just knowing what you're doing, having the tools at your disposal, you have them, use them. And then there's this awesome nonprofit called Trees Atlanta who would be happy to answer all of your questions. If you want to call, we have a ton of arborists on staff. And, you know, if you live in the right place, we'll give you free trees and make those selections for you. So that's my shameless plug.
Yeah, so if I go to the Trees Atlanta sale, get a new tree, how do I make sure that the tree is well established for success?
I'll take that one. It's again really making sure that you're choosing the right selection, whether it be species or genus or even a cultivar. You know, we have experts, landscape architects, arborist staff who are there to help you. But once you get that tree home, it's really important to know what you're doing. You know, digging a really, really wide hole. The standard is 2 times the diameter of your root ball. I always encourage people, if you have the time, go as wide as you possibly can, because the width of the hole is more uncompacted soil for which the roots can kind of grow in their new home. Make sure you have a really unfurled root ball. You know, just keeping in mind all of your standard, you know, planting practices. As you're getting it established, the longer and more infrequent your waterings can be will encourage a non-shallow rooting system. You know, Christie will tell you, I'm sure, in some of the later questions, a shallow rooting system as a tree gets older and older is a bad sign, because when you have heavy rains after droughts, you don't have much to hold the tree in place. You know, regular checks, you know, as the tree gets older, regular checks with I.S.A. certified arborists is really, really important. It saves you money in the long run, and it increases the life of your tree. And, you know, like Michelle mentioned earlier, another shameless plug, but for free classes at Trees Atlanta, we offer things like tree keepers courses, which is actually not free, but what I think my personal favorite is our pruning classes. Learning how to prune will again establish a very strong tree, and you can prevent future maintenance issues. But once the tree gets older, call an I.S.A. certified arborist, and they can help you out, like Christie.
So yeah, so let's talk about mature trees before the storms, though. We've talked about plant selection and why we choose what we choose, when proper planting and establishment. But let's talk about what we can do before the storm. So way back in 2017, before Irma, I lived in Grant Park. A lot of mature trees in Grant Park, a lot of mature trees with previously undiagnosed structural issues and limited soil space. Now, I want to say this, all trees in Georgia, in the Piedmont area of Georgia, are shallow rooted. There is nothing for them under 8 inches of soil. In fact, oftentimes the soil is toxic. So no roots are going to be under there, which leads to another problem. Trees in the forest are fine because they have this interconnected web of roots, and it doesn't matter if they're shallow rooted. It is not the same for our mature trees and that are, you know, planted in single holes or by themselves. So I would like to say, you know, some of the, if you live in an area with mature trees, have a relationship with an arborist and have your trees inspected every 3 to 5 years, period, without exception. We can identify issues that make trees come down. I also want to say, even during Irma, which it was like, I think September 7th and 17th and 18th was a Monday. All of the trees had all of their leaves, which is why they come down. Dead trees hardly ever fall in a storm because there's nothing to catch them and pull them over. So in Irma, I would say we lost 30 over 30-inch trees in Irma in Grant Park alone. And almost every one of those could have been diagnosed, would have been able to receive a permit under the City of Atlanta ordinance to be removed, and did not have to cause the damage that they caused.
Yeah, if I can piggyback onto that, you know, I think we all know on this call, getting a tree removed is not cheap. It's a lot cheaper than getting your roof replaced and having to fight your insurance company. And that's not to fear monger you about trees. I love trees. We're all here because we love trees, but trees eventually fail. They eventually die, and they can do so in a manner that's not going to be catastrophic, of course. And that's why Christie mentioned, you know, get an arborist out there, spend a little bit of money, identify those problems while they're young. There's remediation practices, injections, all sorts of things that you can do to take care of the tree to increase the longevity of it. And in the dire case of removal, it's so much better than having a tree fall on your car or your house or something like that. So yeah, just be aware and call an expert.
What are the most typical questions, Christy, you get related to this topic with your clients?
Well, it's funny. I don't know where this happened, and I don't know why this became the public's understanding of trees, but everybody loves to say it's just a pine. It's a pine tree. It's going to attack and kill me. It's a pine tree. It must have something against me. It wants everybody to die. And the real truth is that any arborist that had cleaned up after any amount of storms is going to tell you we would plant our house in a grove of pine trees because they're almost one of the last things to fall. So, you know, if you think about the succession of the forest and how the succession of the forest happens in Georgia before Bradford pears and some of the invasives came in, is that the first thing that happens is pine trees grow, right? Well, why is that? Well, because pine trees are pioneer trees. Well, let's talk about the founding of our country. Who founded our country? Who did the hard things? Pioneers, right? They went out there into uncharted territory and they made life comfortable for us. And that is exactly what a pine tree does for the forest. It is the first one out there. They are strong. They are resilient. They are soft-wooded, so they tend to be more flexible. They have the same root system. You know, this whole concept of a tap root is not true in clay soils. They simply, all trees have a tap root for 3 to 5 years. Then they get the side structure roots and they let that tap root go. You know, so I want to say that is probably my number one most argued thing that I get is, it's just a pine tree. It needs to be removed. That pine tree is there to kill me, you know, and it simply isn't true. I've just bought a property in Austell. I am the happy owner of 1 white pine and 6 loblollies, and I am thrilled to have them here.
Thank you for explaining that, definitely. How about somebody who has a leaning tree on their property? What would be your advice, Christie?
Well, that is going to depend on the lien. I had a call this morning from a gentleman in Cartersville. We were able to solve his over the phone. My first question is always, is this a new lien? If it is not a new lien, then it is most likely phototrophism, which means the tree is understanding that it is not getting light where it stands, so it tends to grow, putting on tension and compression wood in the trunk, leaning out to where it can get light. When it's phototrophism, that's the tree being a tree, and in my mind, it means it's being smart. It's not sitting there in the shade. It went to go get some sunshine. Should we all be that ambitious? When we worry about a leaning tree is when we have evidence of change, meaning we know it wasn't leaning yesterday, or when we have cracks either in the soil or in the back of the trunk, then we need to have an arborist. In fact, if we are seeing very obvious caverns in the soil or a very obvious crack in the tree, then don't call a certified arborist, a consulting arborist. I want you to call a tree company, because if it can hit something, the likelihood for failure in a tree that is showing cracks in the soil behind it or a crack in the trunk, the likelihood of failure is hours. So if you have something that could be hit and you're seeing that kind of stuff, call a tree company.
All right. So if it
actually,
comes
Michelle, before we move on to that, this is actually a genuine question for you, Christie. In those situations, for those kind of last minute, you know, you see a huge cavern in the soil, there's an obvious uplift, you know, what can someone do to protect themselves from a potential fine or something like that that would be submitted by the city? You know, you don't have the time to go get a DDH, a dead, dying, or hazardous permit. You know that it's going to fall on your house. Is there some sort of documentation that you could do to prove, hey, I really needed this to happen?
Any reputable tree service is going to deal with that for you. And anybody that you have removing a storm damaged tree from over your house, you want to be the most reputable. This is one of those situations where you don't even just call a reputable company and get them out there. It's not time for estimates. It's time to get your house safe. All you need to do is take pictures, and nobody's going to come after you. I mean, and I've had situations where usually, luckily, most of the times these are very photogenic and pretty obvious. I mean, I've had ones where they're actually in the fence line, you know, in all these neighborhoods in Atlanta, we just have fences, tree, and then fence growing up on the other side of the trunk. So in this, a couple of situations I've had it where it just kind of goes sideways like this. And so the fence is all smashed in on this side and there's a gap on that side. Pretty obvious stuff like that. But get photographic evidence. Go ahead and send an email to the city just to say, hey, I have a tree company on the way. This is happening. Nobody is going to mess with you over getting safe over a bad tree.
You mentioned a little bit about dead trees. Would you like to go over more? Like, what would you do if a client asks you to look at a tree that's definitely dead, but it's not hazardous to anybody?
So, you know, here's the thing, one thing that we just don't think about in our urban environments is where these critters hide. Where are the raccoons living? As we're building 14 apartment complexes in Chosewood alone, where is everybody going? And so sometimes it is important for us to leave what we call pecker poles or wildlife areas in the backyard. If you have the space, leave some brambles laying on the ground. Leave a 20-foot section of the tree standing. It's going to save you a little bit of money in wood removal on your tree removal. Yay. And, you know, a dead tree stub will stand for, 10 years, right? And when it falls apart, it just kind of crumbles. So if you have an area of your environment that you could leave some of the remnants of dead trees, that is good and necessary for our city and the forest, that we continue to leave some unsterile areas.
Agree. That's and this stumpery on the Beltline is a great example of that, right? If you had a chance to see it, Christie, this stumpery is a collection of different stumps and dead trees that's giving life to other things like ferns and moss.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, let's see what else here. Is there any way, so let's say you have a tree that needs to be removed. Is there any way that we could repurpose the wood? Anything that we could do with that?
So most lay people don't know this, but almost all trees that are processed in and around the metro area are taken to mulch places. They are then made into mulch, some dyed, some not, and that's what you buy at Home Depot or Lowe's as bagged mulch. So that is one way, without having to pay to process it, that you can reuse it, is by, if you need to mulch, why don't you want to consider keeping the chips when you have tree work done? Another thing is, especially if it's a desirable piece of wood, or if it's a memorial tree, or if it's something that means a lot to you, there are a lot of companies and sawmills around Atlanta that will you can either have the tree company take the wood to them for drying, kilning, and processing, and then you'll get the wood back in 2 years. Or if you have the room, you can have a sawmill come in and you can actually cut the wood on site. They'll help you stack to dry it, and then you can use that wood in a couple of years. There are things like hugelkultur. You can actually take some of the branches and bury them in the soil, creating a pit, put soil over it. It's an ancient gardening practice called hugelkultur. We can reuse them early in the spring. You can get shiitake mushroom plugs and plug some white oak logs with mushrooms and get some shiitakes from them. We can, something as simple as taking 10-inch pieces of wood and cutting them in 2-foot sections and making benches around a fire pit. So, start thinking about how we can leave this land, that we can use some of this on site without having to haul it, process it, put it in bags, and bring it back.
It really, pardon me, it really makes it a lot less painful if you have a desirable tree or a tree that means something to you, and you can make a piece of furniture out of it, or grow mushrooms off of it for the next 5-10 years as it deteriorates. It's obviously so sad to lose a tree, but if you can still see it or use it in perpetuity, like making a table out of it, it's glorious. It's how it's supposed to go.
So I want to say this is kind of cool, and I'll take you outside for a walk in a minute to show you, but I have I'm in Cobb County where there are no ordinances, so I can do what I want. But obviously I'm an arborist. I love trees. I was able to buy a property with a 57-inch, 50-inch, big, huge 30-inch pines, like all kinds of variety of species. But guess what I had? I had a big old Bradford, a big old mimosa, and a big old empress tree. So I had those cut down, but I left everything, every single piece of that wood stayed on site. I had the chips chipped on site. We brought in the chipper into the backyard. All of the chips were left on site to become mulch to protect my larger trees. And I left my stumps, all of the bigger trunk pieces that couldn't be chipped stayed at the back so that I can get a sawmill in and process those later. And I also left the stumps high so that I can have a chainsaw carver come in and do something really cool with the stumps. I mean, most stumps, you can even, as a tree company, for $10 extra, or maybe even for free because they don't have to move that out. Think about just carving a stump into a chair. That anybody can do that with a simple chainsaw. You don't have to have a special chainsaw artist come out. But how cool would it be just to have a chair that people can sit by and remember that tree forever? So get outside of the box, think outside of the box as to what we can do, and try not to put anything on a truck that doesn't need to be put on a truck.
That's great ideas, yeah. Any other questions, Christy, you get from clients related to storms before or after?
Well, everybody wants their trees inspected as soon as the news hits the air. Before Irma, I think that I could have just charged like $10,000 for a tree assessment because people were calling me desperate. And so were all of my friend arborists. They're like, Christy, have you gotten inundated with phone calls? So it is hurricane season, y'all. It is right now hurricane season. We can have a hurricane build tomorrow that hits us in a week and a half. Pick up the phone, call a consulting arborist, call an arborist that's associated with the tree company, but get your trees inspected right now. Do not wait till the day before the storm. We don't want to hear from you. We don't care. You had your chance. We're not going to go crazy because you didn't do your homework. Have your trees inspected and set it on a calendar. Put it on 3 years away on the same month. I also would like to say when I have regular clients, I don't want to see your trees at the same time every season. I don't want to just see them every summer. Sometimes we need to see the trees without the leaves on them. We get it. It's almost like an x-ray. We get to look at the bones without all the skin getting in the way. So, it's always suggest build a relationship with one arborist. They're going to notice changes in your tree. And if you're really nice to them, they're going to remember you and your yard forever.
How long, an approximate, like if I call an arborist company today, how long in an estimate will it take them to come see my trees?
Most consulting arborists are going to get to you within a week. Tree companies, right now, I guess because of the economy, I'm hearing a lot of people say it's rather slow in the industry right now. So I'm going to say you could probably get an estimate within a couple of days. One other thing I want to bring up, because this happens I have to deal with this every single day in having conversations with people. People call me because I'm a consulting arborist and they make the comment, hey, Christy, I called you and I only want you to look at my trees because a tree company is just going to say they need to take down my tree. Okay. First off, that is the difference between having an I.S.A. certified arborist and a tree person come in your yard. What sets us apart from tree people is not necessarily the tree education, although we hope that's it. Because there are plenty of tree men or people that have been working in trees for 30 years and have as much knowledge as I do, but they choose not to get certified. What that certification does is it says that I have taken a code of ethics and that I could lose my certification if I am to lie to you or try to do something unethical in the tree world. So if you're using, I don't want to name any companies, but if you're using a reputable tree company that has certified arborists on staff, if the tree estimator in your yard is a certified arborist, you can 99% of the time trust what they say. They are not going to persuade you to take down a tree that doesn't need to be taken down. We do what we do because we love trees.
How much should I be expecting to pay for a consultation in average?
Consultations, most of the consulting arborists, we actually are all friends behind the scenes and we talk. And I believe everybody has had to kind of go up on rates lately. I tried really hard not to, but I drive a 2,500 diesel truck, so I don't really have a choice. They are, I'd say right now, between $125 and $150 for a site visit. And, you know, that for me personally, and I think for most of my colleagues, we're not going home and writing a report after we meet you. Grab a notebook, take notes. For me, my consultations just aren't about, yeah, that tree is bad, take it out. It's about, oh my gosh, get excited about this beautiful white oak you have in a corner. And let's talk about how to properly maintain trees. And let's talk about construction of trees and how to plant under trees and how to give you a better knowledge of trees so that you can make some of these decisions better on your own too.
That's very good information. Thank you for sharing. Any other thoughts? I mean, it's really hot outside. Any changes in the trees that are happening during this season? Anything that we should be considering in the summer?
Well, if I am a big, huge fan of a rain gauge. If you have mature trees, you have to understand that the cooling effects that we get is because of the mature trees. Sorry, little baby trees, sorry, trees Atlanta, but they just don't give us transpiration. They don't have the cooling effect that a mature tree does. So if a tree is having to let go of moisture and we are not getting any rain, we can have some serious effects. Sadly, most people don't understand that the tree died because of drought, because trees, especially mature trees, take 2 to 3 years to die. So people don't even understand that drought killed it. People don't understand that construction killed it. They just think the tree died or an ambrosia beetle attack or a pine beetle attack killed it. And they don't understand how trees work. So put a rain gauge under the canopy of your tree. If on Monday morning you have not received an inch of rain in that rain gauge, then go and put a hose on your tree, get it some water. That's going to save you thousands in tree removals later down the road. Also, we have sudden branch drop when we go into dry periods, meaning sweet gums and some oak species. We can't figure out exactly why because they won't tell us, but all research is leaning to it's a drought problem. So we go into 2 to 3 weeks of rain, and all of a sudden these trees are dropping 6 and 10 inch large live branches. So they're doing some damage when they fall. And that is because they're drought stressed. It's kind of like they're trying to conserve they're letting go of a branch to conserve the tree. Okay. So if you don't want branches dropping from your oaks or sweet gums and we're in a droughty period, water them.
Great. Well, I think that's so far all the questions that I have. Alex, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think invasive species, especially climbing invasives, are extremely dangerous to your trees, and they're extremely easy to remediate. Well, for the most part, I'm talking obviously about English ivy, I'm talking about wisteria, you know, the usual suspects. All invasive species generally are bad, but the climbing species are especially bad for shear wind events, ice events, things like that. The call that I probably get most that doesn't relate to my normal job is, how do I get rid of this? Cut it at the base of the tree. If you're unsure if it's you know, a poison ivy or something like that, you know, wear a mask, wear protective gear, whatever you have to do to make yourself feel safe. But essentially severing the root system or severing the upward branching system is going to save you a lot of heartache, and is really going to keep, again, shear wind events from taking down unnecessary branches and things like that. So don't plant English ivy. Obviously, you know that, but a lot of people don't. And try, if you're gonna have some sort of climbing anything, just keep it off the base of your trees, because it will climb. It is phototrophic, just like the rest of plant species, and it will crowd out your tree and eventually kill it.
It also disguises defects that I need to be able to see in order to keep you safe. And that for me is one of the biggest deals. I can't tell you how many times I work with a lot of builders, and I have a builder call me and say, oh, go look at this site and see what trees are good or bad. And I go out there and I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? I have to be able to actually see the tree. You know, yeah, English ivy is one of the worst problems that we have in our environment, in my opinion.
Hey, Christie, do you mind mentioning kind of some basic mulching standards for your mature trees? Let's say you remove something on site, you have all this mulch. You know, just give general guidelines for how to mulch around a big tree, if you would.
Yes. So I want drip line to drip line mulched. I want it 3 inches deep, and I don't want it piled up in a volcano up against the base. Let's go take that field trip I promised you, and I'll just give you some real life examples that y'all can see. Since we're on video, let's make some sense of this. Now, we didn't do enough removal for me to get as much mulch as I wanted, but this is kind of going to be example. This is my beautiful hybrid southern red and water oak 50-inch diameter tree here. And you can see that we had, when I bought this house, nobody had really maintained anything. And this had no mulch. We can see that I'm dealing with erosion here because I have uncovered soil, which erodes and compacts. The number one killer of trees in an urban environment is loss of roots, either by compaction or removal by construction. So you see I have mulch up to the base, but not piled high at all. See this? It's kind of bare soil, but just enough mulch where it's not going to erode. And then I increase my depth to about 3 inches, and I have 3 inches out as far as I could till I ran out of mulch. But ideally, I am going to take my mulch layer out to the drip line of the tree. So ideally, my mulch area is almost going to hit my crepe myrtle area. Does that help? How about some how to do it right there? That's how you do it.
That's very good information. That's a very good example. Yeah. So 3 inches.
Yep.
3 inches
3
deep.
We don't want to
Into the
go
drip
much
line.
deeper than 3 inches because by the time rain goes through there, the mulch has kind of absorbed it all, and we're not really getting water to the roots. But let's talk about the benefits of mulch while we're talking about it. It reduces weed competition. It reduces erosion, as we just discussed. It breaks down and provides nutrients to the soil. It holds in and performs like an insulation job, and it insulates so that we're not constantly getting wet, drying out, getting wet, drying out, getting wet, drying out. I prefer the mulch to match the species. Okay, so if we're removing hardwoods, that's great for your hardwood trees, but I would prefer you keep your pine straw under pine trees. Now, look, I'm not going to argue that too much because mulch is so important. A natural mulch that is able to break down is so important to a tree that if you're mulching, I'm not going to argue with you about what. I really do not care. Put pine needles under the oak tree, just mulch, go mulch. It is the single most important thing that you can do for your tree, young or old.
Christie likes mulch.
It's so important. I mean, I put them in my prescriptions. It is very, very important.
All right. Well, anything else, Alex, you like to add to that, or Christy? I think those were great examples. Yeah.
You got your invasives. Did we mention there's going to be a tree sale on October 8th?
That's
But
right.
seriously, you know, our climate is changing very quickly. I won't get on my soapbox, I promise. But this particular tree sale, we have a theme every year, and this one is planting for drought tolerance. It's going to be more and more important. This western this thing that's happening in the West is slowly creeping across the world. We're going to need to start planting more southern genotypes and things that are more drought resistant cultivars that are specifically bred or found to withstand what is coming. So like I said, really important to do your research if you want to come to the tree sale or attend the next Ask the Arborist, which Greg Levine, our co-executive director, is going to be hosting. Sit in on that, and it will be very informative as to what to plant next in your yard. We need everyone here and all of your neighbors and your cousins and your everyone to plant more trees to save us all.
That's right. Christy, I think we lost you for a little bit. Are you still there?
I just turned
There
on
you
the
go.
video because I've been moving around. I'm super ADD, which I guess makes
No
me good at my
problem.
job, but I didn't want to make anybody sick at their stomach. So I just turned off the video, but I'm here.
All right. Well, thank you both for your time. We will be continue doing these type of programs online, virtual, so everybody can access from wherever they are. Thank you for your time and have a great day.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you, Christy and Alex.
Keep on planting, y'all.